Hello, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Ask Amy. All this week, we are focusing on domestic violence and domestic violence awareness. That's why this week we've invited Brandy Lowry from Lone Star Legal Aid. And this is what you do for a living, is help people and deal with people. So I'll stop telling. She's a staff attorney for Lone Star Legal Aid. But sort of tell us what you do and in your line of work where you focus on domestic violence. You're just working with victims, or?
Well, yes, and I'm happy to be here. So, yes, I am a staff attorney at Lone Star Legal Aid in the Individual Safety Unit in Houston, Texas, and most of my clients are domestic violence and sexual assault victims. So what I do for them is I help them with family law matters like custody and divorces, some landlord-tenant, and some consumer issues. So basically what they do is they'll call, and if they're financially eligible, because we help the lower income population, and if their background is domestic violence or sexual assault, then they're assigned to us, and then I assist them with their needs.
Yeah, so it's almost as if, Brandy, you're full attorney, but kind of part attorney, part almost like social worker, caseworker, right?
That is, I literally tell people, like attorney and counselor at law, I'm both. Yeah. That's when you see that comes into play. Because I am an attorney, but at the same time, I'm not just necessarily helping them with their legal matters, but their personal matters, because they may need, water, food, and assistance. And we actually have a really great social worker on staff, too, that helps with that as well.
It sounds like your job would be, obviously, it's super important, but is it stressful? I can't imagine that it's not stressful.
It is definitely stressful because the stories that I hear, and it's sad, but you have to learn how to. I've been doing this for almost 5 years in April, so I learned to try not to take it home with me. But I have that caring spirit, so I want to help everybody. So I just want to fix everybody's problems and make sure everybody is whole.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in your job, people are reaching out to Lone Star Legal Aid for help, for assistance. You were just telling me that you have several interviews lined up for tomorrow for people who need assistance. So they're reaching out to you. We're hoping that by focusing on domestic violence sort of all this week, that people might see it to, maybe they haven't had the courage to reach out, but they've been thinking that they need more information. Either they're the victim or they might know somebody who needs some assistance. And so I'm hoping with our conversation today, we can cover some things that people might learn that could help them out of a dangerous, abusive situation.
And I really do enjoy platforms like this because we need to get the word out. Like, domestic violence can be like a silent thing, and it's like we don't want anybody to sit at home and be silent. Like, speak up, or speak up for your friend, because there are resources out there and we're here to help.
Are we seeing, and I don't even know how this is judged, whether it's by cases, because so many people don't speak out, but are there more cases of domestic violence now than there were, say, it feels like there were since before COVID, or are we just hearing about more of them?
I think we're hearing about them more. I think COVID brought awareness to it, because during COVID, we were locked in the house for a while. So you saw a lot of anger issues being brought out, because at a point, the abuser was able to go to work or able to get out the house. But now when you're stuck in the home with your abuser, they were attacking that person more and taking out their anger out on them. So I think now I think more awareness is being brought. I think our laws are getting better. They still need help, but they're getting better to help the victim and survivor.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit about laws and what you think would help victims, but sort of where our jobs intersect is I do a lot of consumer investigative work, and when they talk to me, the station talked to me about sort of filling in, helping out with this domestic violence thing and raising awareness. It's that intersection of, if I'm a victim of domestic violence and I'm financially tied to my abuser, meaning it seems like that would make it so hard or feel like an insurmountable, feat to leave somebody when my existence, like, my mortgage, my food, like they're paying all my bills, or our finances are tied together. So are there things that you can tell people who might be in a situation that how they can escape or how they can get out when they either may not be working or, and may be dependent on the person that's abusing them?
Well, one, I would say, if you're trying to leave, then let's change the mindset, which that takes a lot. Because what I want victims to know, and soon to be survivors, is don't let them have that control. Don't let the finances stop you from leaving. Because what can happen is, yes, you feel like you're stuck and tied to that person because of finances, but there's so many resources out here that can help you. You can get on government assistance such as food stamps, TANF, you can apply for health insurance. So never feel like because you don't have the financial resources, you can't leave. And then when you're preparing to leave, you also want to think, where can I go that is safe physically, mentally, and emotionally? Because those three things are important. When we think of safe, we think that, oh, well, I can leave and it's physically safe. But then you go there and you're like, oh my gosh, this person is stressing me out and I'm already trying to leave a stressful situation. So you want to go somewhere where you feel safe physically and then mentally and emotionally so you can have time to think of your next move.
And sort of what you were meaning by that is, like maybe it's one of your relatives, say a parent, which might be the first thing that we always think of.
Exactly.
But is that parent necessarily going to help you in that situation if it's an I told you so or
because parents can do that, even siblings. So, we do sometimes, like for me, my safe space is my mom's house in Dallas. But for me, that is my physically, mentally, and emotionally safe space. That may not be for somebody. So I want people to know, just because you do have a relative that you feel like physically, but are they going to be mentally and emotionally there for you?
Right. That's a very good point. And so you're looking for sort of that safe place, safe space that you can go to. Should I start searching for these financial assistance routes if I need that before I leave? I mean, I don't know how long some of those things take to be approved if I were to.
You don't have to, because the most important thing is to get out. And what you can start with is first start out with like having copies that you have on hand, like any type of identification, passports, IDs, birth certificates. If you have children, make a copy of those and then put them somewhere safe. Then get you like an overnight bag or a spend the night bag and put clothes in there. Do not leave those in any financial statements if you can have access to your financial records. You could put those in a bag. Do not leave it at home where the abuser can see it. Take it to a friend's house or that place where you feel safe. And then when you're ready to leave, have a safe word like pineapple or oranges. So when you call that person and say, hey, pineapple, that person can come down the street and meet you, leave when the person is not there. And then you have all the stuff that you need. So then when you get ready to apply for the government assistance or any type of assistance, you'll have that information handy. Your
social security number, kids' social security numbers, like you don't want to leave those things behind.
Right. And you can just make a copy of it too. So, I mean, sometimes the original is good, but if you don't have time to get the original, at least have a copy to get started.
I mean, when I started asking a lot of these questions about finances and about, in these situations, it's sad, but a lot of times it is life or death. Or if if your life is in danger, that can't be your first. That might be what's holding you back because you care about the safety and welfare and well-being of your children. But how safe are you if you stay and try to work all those things out?
And usually you're not necessarily working those things out. You're just shielding the abuse from the children, but the children still see it. And that's one thing that I would like to tell people out there, like, you're not just because you're taking the abuse and you feel like, oh, the abuser's not attacking the children, you just been taking it for them. But it could potentially go to the children. And even though the abuser may not be physically, but they may be verbally or mentally abusing the children.
Wow.
And they can see that.
Right. Yeah. And grow to think that that's normal.
Exactly.
And that's, how loved ones treat each other. Okay, so when we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about some things that people can do and some research that they can do. You told me about a really interesting thing that victims would need to know about if they are looking for answers on finding resources and how they can kind of hide some of that stuff. So when we come back, we're going to talk about that. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this segment of Ask Amy. We are focusing on all things domestic violence and hopefully providing some valuable information to victims of domestic violence or people who know someone who might be a victim of domestic violence, who might see this. Brandy Lowry is a staff attorney with Lone Star Legal Aid, and you specialize in domestic violence and sexual abuse cases. So we want to make one thing clear while we're giving sort of tips to people, that this isn't, even though you are an attorney, it's not legal advice. Why is that important that people know that?
It is important because I don't want anybody to feel like that I'm representing them and then maybe take the information differently and use it for, non-legal purposes or whatever. So I just want to say, this is intended to serve as legal information and does not replace legal advice. So if you need to contact Lone Star Legal Aid, you can call us at 713-652-0077, or you can apply online at lonestarlegal.org, or give us a call.
Yeah, and so you mentioned too, so when they call that number, we'll put it up here so everybody can see it, 713-652-0077, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. If you call, that people could actually apply over the phone. So if they don't have access to the internet or computer, they can just talk to somebody and submit their information to see if they qualify for help from
Correct.
you guys. And even if they don't qualify for help from you guys, they can go online, they can go to Lone Star Legal Aid. And you said if somebody is searching sort of online and trying to get some of these answers, like what to do next, what I should do now, that there's an easy way to do that and not tip off or show your hand to an abuser if you're living in the same household.
So if you are on our website, or even like the National Domestic Violence Hotline on the website, or any of the shelters, there's a safe exit button. It's usually at the top in the left for our website. And when you click that, like if your abuser is coming in, or if you're done searching, click the safe exit button. It clears the browser history. So then if the abuser goes back checking your browser history, it won't show up. It'll make it seem like it's something else, like you were checking for a cruise or something like that. But it will not show that you were looking for resources to leave your situation.
And it's pretty easy to see the safe exit
yes,
button?
Yes, it says safe exit. And then it has like a little door, like you're leaving.
Awesome. Okay. All right. That is very good information. So knowing that you might be able to do that while you're at home, you don't have to go find a friend's computer or go to the library to look for some of these same resources. You mentioned that, you guys, I'm sure, get asked to help far more clients than what you're able to help. But you said something to me that I thought was interesting, is that, we don't even necessarily take a case unless the person has left the home with their abuser. Talk about that, and why is that? So
I personally, again, I want to help everybody. If I could help everybody, I can. But I don't want to put somebody in a situation to where in any lawsuit, a person has to be served on the other end. So meaning the constable or the sheriff will come to your door and hand that person the document that they're being served. I don't want to put a victim in that situation because of that are being abused, because that can upset them. Even if they're at work and be served and the victim is still in the home, the abuser can come back and just get in a rage, get angry, and take it out on that person. And I don't ever want to put that person in harm's way. So I prefer for you, if you are wanting our services, still definitely research, still contact us, still apply. But I prefer for you to be out of the home, be somewhere safe. And then if the person does get served, well, you're already out their way. So they can get angry at home and tear up everything at home. That's fine. But you won't be there.
Got it. And you're mostly talking, when you're saying being served, I mean, if you're married or common law married in these cases, you have to be, you're usually helping them serve divorce papers. Divorce
papers, custody cases, even landlord-tenant cases. So, yeah.
And those are the kinds of things that you help with when you when you guys are able to take on a case. Custody, don't even always think about that, like custody issues.
There's custody issues.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, because of the fact that the abuser will use control. Well, I'm going to take the children away from you if you leave me, or, if you file for divorce, then I'm going to get custody. And that's a lot of times what keep people in the home, because they're scared, because they start listening because of that control that they're used to. And regardless, women or men are scared to lose their children. So it's like, well, I'd rather stay and put up with this because I don't want that person to take my children away from me.
Right. You talked about something called, was it an abuser wheel?
It's a power and control wheel.
A power and control wheel. What do you mean by that?
So a power and control wheel, it's a wheel, and it lists everything that an abuser does to you. So it's like they can be financial abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse, but it's just a control that abuser has and how it escalates to get to physical, verbal, and mentally. And
you mentioned that one of the things on that power and control wheel is financial.
Oh, yeah.
And that it's a fairly new thing, but, not only might your finances be tied to your abuser in that you depend on them, but they might also sort of make be dependent on you or use some of your, to explain that to me.
So financial coercion, it's new. I would say maybe 5 years old. Let me say it's not new. It's being talked about now because this has been going on for a while. So financial coercion basically is if an abuser is making you take a credit card out or a loan in your name and using it against your will, pretty much. So like they're forcing you, like, hey, you need to buy this car for me, and they're forcing you to do it, and then they don't pay the bill, they let it go back, it messes up your credit. So that's financial coercion, and that is a form of abuse.
Yeah, and so when all of those things happen, you're learning about that and dealing with that. Because when somebody leaves, is there any way out of that? Or you've sort of signed all those documents to take out somebody's loan?
Still at the end of the day, you can also file criminal charges against them too. But still at the end of the day, it's marital debt. And it was done within, in community property. So what we can do is we can ask for reimbursement in the divorce.
Okay.
And as long as you have your documentation saying, not documentation, you have your statements, and we know, we can figure out what he did and what she did or whatever. But we can ask for reimbursement, and they can reimburse them in a divorce for those bills.
Got it. Okay. That is very interesting. All those things that you don't necessarily think about. Let's talk a little bit about protective orders, because when you're talking about being out of the home when somebody's served, and sort of what a protective order is and what it can actually do. Because, I have heard, and I said, is this just sort of something that people say that's not true, that sometimes the most dangerous time is right after someone has been served with a protective order, because like the divorce paperwork, it makes them angry.
Well, protective orders are powerful. Despite what you think. If you feel like you need a protective order, absolutely file for a protective order. And you can file here in Harris County, they're free. I think protective orders are free throughout all the other counties. But I mainly are in Harris, Brazoria, Fort Bend County, and Montgomery County. But protective orders are free to file. And here in Harris County, we have the 280th District Court, which is our protective order court. So you will file a protective order, and you can file a temporary ex parte protective order, which gives you, while you're waiting on your hearing date, it'll give you 20 days protection until you have your hearing.
Okay.
In a protective order, though, if you have a family violence protective order, you have to prove 2 things. You have to prove that there's a history of family violence, and you have to prove that family violence is likely to occur in the future. So basically, you're having to tell the judge, yes, the abuser has been abusing me all this time, but I'm also scared of this person if you don't give me the protective order.
Got it.
And then with the protective order, you do have to serve that person, and that person does have the right to appear in court.
So to get a protective order, then, do I necessarily have to have reported it to police? Do they mean that kind of evidence that there have been incidents before?
No, your testimony alone. We tend to say, oh, well, you need a police report. Well, a lot of times people don't call the police. And a lot of times they're scared to call the police because they feel like the police may not do anything. So a lot of times victims are sitting at home suffering in silence and not realizing, well, they're thinking, if I call the police, he may kill me. Or he or she may, I may upset them. So you don't necessarily have to call the police to have a protective order.
Okay.
It helps, but I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, because I didn't call the police, I can't get a protective order.
Right. What can it not do? And I'm going to say, in the news recently, within the last month, we saw the news about the alleged abuser who returned to the family home. He had a protective order and he set it on fire while he was inside. There are only so many things, I guess, that the police can do. What do you tell people? Okay, here's what to expect.
Well, with a protective order, they're not supposed to come within 200 or so feet away from you. If you have children, from the daycare, from your home. If you were there, you don't necessarily have to leave. If y'all both show up at the grocery store at the same time, that person is supposed to leave, not you. But I would also tell my clients, just because you were there first, still leave. Yeah. Because you don't know what that person may do. So still leave. If you have, I tell them, keep a copy of your protective order. If they do come at you, call the police and show them I have a protective order. So never just, the protective order does help. It has some type of safety. Unfortunately, people still will do what they want to do anyway, but having a protective order still gives you some type of safety.
Got it. Okay.
Because what happened in the news, he ended up going to jail anyway, and he violated that protective order.
Right.
So even though I don't do any criminal, but that might probably help. It's like you violated protective order and you set this house on fire.
Right.
So just like added charges towards him, so against him.
Got it. Okay. You said a really interesting thing to me before we started this conversation. I'd like to talk about it when we come back. And this is just sort of advice for anybody who has a friend or a family member who you might suspect is going through abuse in a relationship. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Welcome back to this episode of Ask Amy. We are here again talking to Brandy Lowry with Lone Star Legal Aid about domestic violence. And one thing that you said to me that I thought was really surprising is you mentioned the number 7. 7 times. And why is that significant when it comes to domestic violence victims?
So statistics show that it takes about the 7th time for somebody to leave. So usually, like the first couple of times, they'll go and then they'll come back. They'll leave and come back. But usually on that 7th time, they will finally leave. They'll finally get that courage to leave and not come back. So usually about 7 times is when a person actually finally is like, I'm fed up and I'm done and I don't want to do this anymore.
Especially because it's usually many times, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you're the expert, but it's an escalating situation.
Not necessarily.
Really?
It doesn't have to be an escalated situation. It could just be, they're just tired. Because a lot of times abuse is not necessarily physical. It can be verbal and it can be mentally. So it may not be escalating.
So when you say 7 times, we mean 7 instances of some sort of abuse, whether it's verbal or physical. And I feel like in most situations we've all sort of, maybe not all of us, but have seen a situation where we think, wow, I can't believe that person's in that situation. And then we see them go back to it. It's really common.
It is common. And we need to, because if you have a friend in that situation, don't judge them. Because we tend as humans to be like, oh, I can't believe you keep going back to him and why are you doing this or going back to her and how dare you? We don't need to do that. What we need to do is be kind, give that person grace and just be a listening ear to that person because eventually they will leave and they're going to want to go to somebody who's not going to judge them.
Right. And so just sort of to recap some of the things that we have talked about here, initially, when that person gets the courage to make that first step, to leave an abusive relationship, we've talked about Lone Star Legal Aid and the domestic violence, the national.
The National Domestic Violence Hotline. And it's a 1-800 number, and they have a website.
But on those websites, they have that safe exit button.
Yes,
where you can
safe
leave.
exit. Yes.
So if you're looking around there, we've given the phone number for Lone Star Legal Aid where people can call just as a resource. And that number again, let's give it, is
713-652-0077. And we deal with 72 counties in like the southern sector of Texas.
Oh, wow. So that's a pretty huge area.
Yes.
So they might not be in the Houston area. And then are you guys able to refer people if they call, if they see this from somewhere outside of the Texas area? One thing that you mentioned, too, is if you don't meet sort of the income level or you're not low income enough to qualify for help from Lone Star Legal Aid, you guys sometimes can.
There's other resources out there because you can call the State Bar of Texas if you're in Houston, the Houston Volunteer Lawyers Association. So there's other resources out there if we're unable to help you.
Okay. And then just other things we're recapping is a go bag, having a bag ready, packed.
Yes.
And tell me what kinds of things I need in there, including documents.
So definitely have your important documents in there. I would say like a spend the night bag, like maybe some clothes for at least for a couple of days or a week, because later on you can go back when the person is not there and getting your stuff out. Just enough to get you, I guess, through the next couple of days while you're getting yourself together.
And financial documents or paperwork, meaning like copies of
your driver's license, your state ID, your passport, any financial statements, birth certificates, anything that is of importance, then you need a copy of that, or at least get the original and put it in that bag. All right. And then do not keep the bag at home. Have it at somebody else's house.
Okay. All right. And identifying somebody else that you feel like you can go to.
Right.
And you probably don't want to make it sort of the first person that your abuser might think about.
You can if you feel safe physically, mentally, and emotionally. But the abuser may go there, but then call the police if he shows up. And then apply for a protective order.
Yeah. All really good tips, a lot of good information. Brandy, I appreciate you sitting down with us today. In our show notes, we're going to include the links to Lone Star Legal Aid and a lot of the resources that we mentioned here, and we'll explain sort of how to file for a protective order. You keep hearing that, but it's like, but where? Where do I go? How do I do it?
You can actually file protective order on your own. Like I said, it's free. You can go to texaslawhelp.org, and they have a protective order toolkit on that site.
Okay.
So you can do that as well, too. So if you are always, again, never wait. If you are in danger, leave. Call 911, get that safety bag, and leave. Call somebody to come get you. Like I said, you can use a safe word like pineapples, chocolate, or whatever, but do not suffer in silence, because there's plenty of resources out there that is able to assist.
All right. Brandy, thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope that this information has been helpful to you, or maybe someone that you know needs this information. We would ask you to share it to possibly save a life. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great week.